Welcome to a Plague Tale Innocence over at the Edge of Casual. I'm your host Verso, and continuing with my theme of apparently having no theme over on this channel, I'm going to go ahead and talk about this game, which doesn't really fit the mold, I think, of what I had in mind when I started the Edge of Casual channel, but you know, with that said, it is sort of a casual game. Maybe stretching it here. Well, casual, but also stressful, so, you know, reconcile those two somehow. But anyway, A Plague Tale, Innocence. This is a stealth adventure game, but it's not really a stealth adventure game in the style of like a Hitman or something like that, where you might be coming up behind people and putting them into a chokehold with piano wire or poisoning their drinks, that sort of thing. At least I don't think that you are. I mean, just being practical, your main character is Amicia, who is this French maiden, not a French lady of an aristocratic household, whose family is responsible for like a certain section of the woods. I guess they're wardens of the forest or something, I don't know. The game takes place in the 1300s, and anyway, there's a plague. Your family gets blamed for reasons that I'm not going to get into for risk of introducing spoilers into this video, and I don't want to do that beyond what you can obviously see with your own eyes. So anyway, what I will say is that at this point in the game, and I guess I'm more or less still sort of in the prologue-y section of the game, it seems very linear at this point in time, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But, you know, at the beginning of the game, I was sort of treating it like any other sort of open world game, where whenever I got to a hub-like section, I was going around looking for Easter eggs, collectibles, that sort of thing. And I only found one thing. I mean, there wasn't nothing. But, you know, once I realized that this wasn't going to be necessarily that kind of game, where you have to go and explore every little dark corner of the game world, I found it a bit of a relief, if I'm being honest, because I'm not a huge fan of like the open world trend in games these days. I think it's gone a little bit too far. For example, when open world sort of seeped into Dragon Age and Mass Effect, I kind of lost interest in those series, which is unfortunate. So the point is, I don't mind something that's a little bit more constrained.
I can smell something cooking. Is it a fair?
It doesn't sound like a fair.
So as I mentioned, seems to be a very story-centric game. And at this point, you're on the run with your little brother Hugo, who is a character that Amicia doesn't know particularly well because he's been sick for most of his life and it's been kind of hidden away. So at this point in the narrative, some stuff has gone down in your home village and you're on the run, and these people are looking for somebody to blame for the plague that has overrun their village.
And you found him. It's your damn music what brought them out, huh? Those dirty vermin that invaded our church. That filth would attack our children in their beds and gave them the black thing.
Okay, so they're burning witches at the stake, that sort of thing. A couple of children without parents stumble into their town. You know, they're going to get chased away, or worse. I mean, when you think about it, a young woman and a small boy in a plague-ridden town, all on their own, showing up very suspiciously. You know, we should probably just kill these kids to be safe, right? So, much of the game so far has been sort of these basic stealth mechanics. Nothing too complicated mechanics-wise at this point. I guess, you know, mostly you just go around sort of crouching behind things, and you can pick up stones from around the environment, or occasionally clay pots, and throw them to cause distractions. As you'll notice in this scene, you're throwing a stone at some metal pans, and it gets this townsperson's attention. And once he turns his back, you can kind of sneak up the stairwell behind him. You do have a sling, and I guess you could say it's a weapon of sorts, but at least at this point in the game, you don't use it to attack people at any point. It's mostly just used kind of to knock things down. There are some sort of puzzle platformer elements, boxes that can be knocked over, that sort of thing, and so that you can climb on them. And generally, I guess you wouldn't want to use your sling in most situations because it does make a lot of noise, or at least that's the argument that the game presents. So early on in the game, you're doing a lot of escaping, so you're just running down these narrow streets, occasionally ducking into some tall grass areas, that sort of thing. You really have no idea where you're going. You haven't had time to make a mental map of the town that you're in, so you just, you know, you're going wherever people are not.
Why are they doing that?
They think we have brought evil with us. We have to find a way out of here.
And occasionally there are mechanics like this where you have to work with your brother Hugo in order to accomplish a task. A lot of times that amounts to kind of letting him pass through gaps in the walls or windows, that sort of thing. And sometimes you borrow his strength, as in this case, to move a large object that Amicia would not be able to move on her own. These are not necessarily really complex puzzles at this point in the game, but again, we are sort of at the beginning, and these are knee-jerk impressions, just to reinforce that one more time. I haven't played further into the game, so you know what I know pretty much at this point. I kind of like the bits where you get to work with your brother. It reminds me a little bit of another game that I liked called Brothers, A Tale of Two Sons. And that was a very different sort of game, to be sure, but the point is there was an older brother and a younger brother, and they had to work together to get past certain obstacles. In that game, you did control the other brother, whereas in this game, you just kind of have to trust Hugo to go off and do things on his own while you wait for him to return.
Do you have a better idea?
Oh, I just realized I never gave my usual disclaimer about this not being a Let's Play. I don't know, maybe at this point it's pointless to deny that I'm doing Let's Play content, but I still prefer to think of this as commentary. Or maybe a hybrid review / discussion. I had the hardest time getting this thing into place, so I'm just going to talk for a bit while I do this so that you don't focus upon what a terrible job I was doing. Anyway, I'm not really sure if you're time limited with tasks like this, or if for example, if you were to take too long to figure out a puzzle, would people find you in your sort of secreted away location? I tend to doubt it. But I think the game is probably inclined to give you as much time as you need to figure out the puzzles like this. Luckily, I never had to discover that. I actually did get one game over screen, I'm going to admit that. I stood up by accident and started running early on when I should have been crouching, and I was discovered. And, you know, a sword was thrust through a main character, we'll just say that. It wasn't pretty, but this game, like many others in this genre, has an autosave feature. Though, you know, if I'm being honest, I actually sort of prefer to be able to save wherever I want to save, so I've never been a huge fan of autosave. Though I did notice that when you load up a new game, you have the option to replay older chapters, though I'm not sure to what end you might want to do that. Anyway, the point is, if you got a game over, it would restart you from your previous autosave. No big deal.
I know! Quickly! Quickly! The ladder! Go and climb! You first!
It doesn't look safe, Amicia.
We're running out of time! They're coming!
It's going to break.
No!
He said it was going to happen. Anyway, this is a beautiful game, by the way, and, you know, I don't play a lot of games in this genre lately. I guess I've been focusing more on strategy titles and indie games, that sort of thing.
There you are!
But, you know, stylistically, this game is beautiful all over, and it might not necessarily be testing the limits of my video card, which is probably a good thing, honestly, because I don't have the greatest video card. But anyway, I really like the visual aesthetic of it. It looks nice, and Amicia herself is a really nicely designed character, who I sort of immediately became fond of her. Part of that is the voice acting as well, of course.
I was scared.
I'm sorry about the ladder.
It's my fault. You were right.
We need to go home.
We can't. Not without Laurentius.
Honestly, it's amazing that you haven't been caught about 1,000 times so far. I mean, you have no idea where you're going. It's very stressful in that sense because, as I mentioned, you're essentially just going wherever people are not, and you're hoping that you get lucky. And you kind of feel like in real life you would probably be dead 1,000 times over. I mean, it's kind of a really bare experience. If you look at the user interface, there's no map. There's nothing to guide you. You feel totally on your own, as you should.
Plague spreads through the village.
You think it's normal to have a girl and a kid running around?
Eh?
So I said way back at the beginning of this video that this is a casual game, and you know, that may be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think it's true to a certain extent. These puzzles at this point, they're not really straining the brain, though I have a feeling that that could change at any time. I'm totally okay with what I've seen so far, but I do want to see it start introducing a few new mechanics, just to keep things fresh, though at this point the story alone is enough impetus to continue on.
I heard something. Don't move.
Watch yourself. Those little devils could be anywhere.
We really have no clue what's happening at this point in the game. We've been sort of ushered off to this part of the world to attempt to find a doctor friend of your father's who has been treating Hugo
No, not again.
and might know something. We don't even know where that doctor is.
I don't know. There's no way out.
Oh no! Quickly, please!
I'm trying. I'm trying. It won't hold them for long. Quickly, quickly.
Oh gosh, don't even watch this part. It took me way too long to notice that open window in the upper right of the screen. And I'm not sure why. It's, you know, probably because it was like 2 in the morning when I was playing this and my brain was perhaps not functioning at peak efficiency. I think it may also be because your brother Hugo, he doesn't do a whole lot at this point in the game, so you might tend to forget that he can do things. So when I glanced upon that window, I wasn't primed yet to think, oh, of course, that's a Hugo spot.
Hugo, go through there. Oh,
But at least I eventually got it.
What the hell are you all doing here?
I blocked into the plan.
can you unblock it?
I'm trying.
So at this point, I'm just waiting for him to return, and this was a bit nerve-wracking, I'm not gonna lie. The music, the voices, everything, banging on the doors.
Run!
I have to stop Amicia.
Oh, please, we
We're really testing the limits of this poor kid. This entire chapter is framed as one large chase sequence, essentially, and there's probably not a whole lot to say about it.
We're finished.
This way.
So you found the one person in town who's apparently not trying to kill you. Okay, we're coming up on the end here, and I will say that for an old-fashioned narrative-driven kind of game, this is sort of hitting the spot for me. Even if some of these other elements are there, like all the hidden achievements and collectibles, the game certainly isn't banging me over the head with that stuff, so that's nice. I'm clearly not a player who cares about 100%ing a game, that sort of thing. Just give me a good story and I'm happy, that's all I need. Anyway, we'll leave it there. This is A Plague Tale: Innocence. And let me know what you think. Questions, comments below. And in the meantime, thanks for watching and keep it casual.